Yasmin clutches her infant daughter, Hasina, to her chest as she makes her way home. She arrives at a makeshift shelter made of tarpaulin, where she and her family are staying as refugees. Yasmin belongs to a minority tribe in Myanmar called Rohingya, which has been targeted for their Islamic beliefs. Early one morning in September 2017, Yasmin woke to the loud whir of a helicopter circling her village in Myanmar. The next thing she heard was a machine gun strafing the buildings. Together with her husband, Yasmin grabbed her 4 children, all under the age of 5, and rushed toward the sea. The screams and gunfire faded behind them as they ran, and by the time they reached the coast, the only sound that remained was the lapping of the waves. Still, the family was afraid. Hasina, then just a newborn, survived those 8 days on breast milk with a piece of cloth for shade. Finally, Yasmin and her husband decided that capture was better than starvation. On the morning of the 9th day, the family fled toward Bangladesh. After an arduous journey, they ended up in a refugee camp called Camp Lida in southeast Bangladesh. The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, is one of several humanitarian organizations providing basic necessities at the camp. Although life in the refugee camp is relatively safe, it's not always easy. Access to latrines is limited, private bathing is nearly impossible to find, and schools are non-existent. As a Rohingya refugee in Bangladesh, Yasmin's options for food are also limited. So twice a month, she gathers her youngest child and sets out for her allotted portion of rice, lentils, salt, sugar, and oil. Yasmin's husband was a successful shopkeeper and homeowner in Myanmar before the attack. With the income from his dry goods store and the shelter from his 2-story wood house, her husband provided for all his family's needs. But now they have no choice but to accept aid and wait. Yasmin and her family are part of the 800,000 Rohingya refugees living in Bangladesh, yearning to return home to Myanmar. Until then, ADRA and other humanitarian organizations are working to meet their needs. Your support of ADRA and the mission offerings makes a tangible difference for people like Yasmin and her family.
Greetings from Bangladesh. I'm here today as we're doing a food distribution to the Rohingya refugee camp. This week we'll be providing food, and I've just been to another camp where we're providing shelter. As I sit here and I look at the needs that exist, and I feel the pride that comes to me as I see the staff at work, it reminds me of the great work that ADRA does. As I pass through this camp, and I'm reminded of the ingenuity of the Rohingya people, their ability to survive and still etch out some kind of a living in these difficult conditions. And I came across here with this fish market. And as I looked at the fish market, it reminded me of the story in the Bible of the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, where the people were hungry and they came to Christ, and He blessed the food and He multiplied it. We are distributing food to 19,000 families. That's around about 100,000 people. But all up, there's 800,000 people in these refugee camps. All of them hungry, all of them in need of a blessing, all of them in need of a miracle. And perhaps it reminds me that maybe we can be that miracle, that through our generosity, that we can help to multiply this fish, that we can help to bring food to the starving people here amongst these Rohingya camps. It's a great honor and privilege to be able to feed 100,000 people this week, bringing them food for 2 weeks. But what about beyond those 2 weeks, and what about those who we're yet to touch? And so as I'm reminded of the way that God blessed in the Bible, I'm reminded that He is still a God who blesses today. that He's placed us here with a reason and a purpose. I'm also reminded of the woman at the well where she met Jesus and He offered her the water that shall never run dry. In this particular refugee camp, we have a difficulty with the supply of water. At the refugee camp that I visited yesterday, it was more inland and there was a number of wells. But if we sink wells in this region where we're close to the coast, all that we get is salty water which is not drinkable. And so we're dependent upon shipping by gravity-fed water system, piping water from the mountains nearby to try and bring clean water. But unfortunately, the water supply is not adequate, and so we actually have a water shortage in this camp, around 100,000 people, and we have a great need for water. And so just as we need to provide people with the water from the well that shall never run dry, we also need water here, because water is life. Before we can talk to them about life in general, we have to meet their needs. And thirst is a very real need of the people here in this camp. And so I just ask you to be generous in your support for ADRA in this work as we try and help these people who have suffered much trauma as they've been driven from their homes, where they had comfort, where they had businesses, driven with automatic weapons fired at them, losing family members as they fled. And now they come here to a situation of dire need.